Lesson, I want to show you, I want to take what we learned in that first original lesson, a lesson where you had a sprite moving around the screen like this, and then you added some input, you added some text. So with this video, I want to show you how to add a second sprite, to initially add it as a single image, and then add it as a group where we use a for loop to iterate the sprite multiple times across the screen, and then add collision between that, all while adding up a little text box up in the top corner where it can keep score of our collisions. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we want to add in that second sprite. So I should already have a melon image that I got off of the Phaser GitHub website. So in my folder I should have that. There's my melon. So first thing I want to do is actually preload that to the Phaser file. So same way we did it before with the pineapple in the background. Game.load.image. I'm going to call it melon. And the file that I want to reference is melon.png. And then up top here, I'll add a new variable and I'll call it melon. And I'll save it like that. So it should have, brackets updated the window, but it's not created yet. So then down here, this is where I want to add the sprite. So below where I add and create the pineapple or render it to the screen, I'm going to add the melon. So game.add.sprite. And I want to just put this at a random coordinate. So we'll use the same thing that we did for our text up here. And we'll say game.world. Random x, game.world.random y, and we want to reference our melon image. So if I save that, we should see it here. There's our melon, pretty small, but you notice that the pineapple just goes right by it. So at the same time, I'm going to open up my JavaScript console here. That should be a habit that everyone gets into while working with JavaScript in the browser. Just so that you know that it's always that your code is working, and then if you have to go back for debugging purposes, that's available to you there as well. Alright, so we've created our melon. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to add collision. So in order to do that initially, as a rule of thumb, for each object that we have, so here's our pineapple, our melon, we want to create a nickname, and this nickname will be what our collision function references for parameters. So for example, we'll name pineapple.name, and we will simply name it pineapple. We want to do the same thing for the melon. So if we want to make sure that we can reference it in the collision function, we'll give it a name, melon. And at the same time, the melon's pretty small, so what I can go ahead and do, and I can resize that just like we did for the pineapple by just scaling the X and scaling the Y. And I'll just give it the same size as the pineapple. So we'll save that, refresh our page, and we should have a bigger melon somewhere. There it is, humongous. I'm going to try with that too, so it's round. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do to add collision, anytime you want to add collision, is you need to add a physics function inside of your update function that will reference your actual collision function that you will make outside of this update function. So what you want to do is inside of your function, your update function here, we have our if statements with our controls. We want to add game.physics.collide, and inside this is where we want to reference it. So we're going to reference our pineapple. This is the variable we are referencing up here. We want to reference pineapple, melon. We'll put the name of our collision function, which we're going to call collision handler. and we'll add null in this. So we save that. So now when the program runs our function update, it will automatically run this as well. So this collision handler here is the actual name of the collision function. So we're going to go down further, and this is where we want to write that function. So we'll call it function collision handler, and the parameters that we want to put inside are the nicknames, so pineapple and melon. Remember, make our first two brackets initially, leaving a space inside. You want to make those first. So within the collision, this is where we decide what do we want to happen when they do collide. And in this case, we want to kill the melon so that if the pineapple hits the melon, it disappears. So simply we put melon.kill parentheses, and we save that. So if we come over here, we refresh our page here, when we collide with the melon, wherever it is, refresh that. So there's our melon. When we collide with it, it should disappear. Good. So now it's gone, and so that is, you can use that with a lot of different games as far as collision and disappearing. So our melon is on there. Now, if we wanted to add multiple melons, the best way to do it would be to add a group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out what I just made for the melon so that I can remake it as a group. So first thing I want to comment out is the variable melon. The next thing I want to comment out is this entire code. Now the easy way to do that, instead of putting slashes in front of each of them, is a slash, asterisk, and then at the end of the code, asterisk, slash. Now it's just commenting that out. Alright, and the rest of it we should be able to leave the same. We will ultimately change this melon here. So what we want to do to actually make our group is, the first thing is I want to decide what do I want to call the group, and we'll call it melons. So we'll add variable, we'll call it melons. So then down here, and I'll just type this below our first time we created the melon, is now we want to add the group. So we'll do melons game.add.group. And so this is just simply, instead of adding one sprite a bunch of different times, we can keep our code clean and use a for function, for loop, just to create multiple iterations of the melon sprite on the screen. Okay, so after we've created the group here, now we just want to write our for loop. So we'll set it up just like you know how. So we'll say I equals 0. If I is less than 50, increase by, plus plus means increase by 1. So now we'll open up the bracket. We'll close it. And so inside here, we want to create a new variable for the individual melon object. We'll just call it M. So we'll set up variable M equals melons. And this is melons as in our variable for our group here. Melons.create. And inside it, we'll put it anywhere random place, game.world.randomx, game.world.randomy, and we'll reference our melon image. Alright, so within this, remember, to handle the collision, we want to give it a nickname, so we'll say m.name is equal to melon. We're going to add +1 here, just so that it references our actual melons group, as opposed to each individual melon. So melons +1, and we'll scale in here as well. Let's say scale 2x equals 1, and scale .y equals 1. So there's our group. We've added it. It should have been created. So if we refresh this, we should see melon is not defined. Okay, so we're catching an error with the collision. So we want to change the rest of it down here. So the simple way to do that is to scroll down. We'll go to our collision handler in here. And so when we add our game.fixes.collide function here, we want to change melon because that was our variable before, but we commented it out. We want to add melons. So if we save that, refresh, we should see 50 melons on the screen. Very good. So it works, and they collide. Okay, so in the next video, now that we have it colliding, I'll show you how to add score, and we'll move our pineapple in space text later on. So with your own project, just make sure to continue using your same images, add your own new image, new sprites, change the text background, that sort of thing.